Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear class, I hope all of you are fine and safe at your home. Today we will talk about some isotopes labeling methods which are being used in research for identification of differentially expressed proteins. We will see how can we label, what kind of isotopes are being used for labeling in which kind of techniques. So let's begin the lecture.
I have prepared this lecture from these two books, Irwin H. Siegel and Krish Murthy, Fundamentals of Biochemical Calculation. So if you want to practice more numerical problems related to this topic, you can consult these two books. Full text of these books is available on LMS page of your course.
Learning goals for today's lecture, we will first see the introduction about the quantification, then why we need to quantify the material, then how mass spectrometry is not suitable to quantify or to quantitate the proteins or other samples, then what is the use of the stable isotope labeling methods. We will see the examples of few methods, and then what alternate we can use with the help of fluorescent dyes. We will discuss the dyes method. So introduction, we use mass spectrometry technique for estimation of the quantity of the samples, and mostly mass spectrometry is used for the quantitation of proteins, like we use the protein samples for quantitation. And for estimation of the protein quantity, there exist several methods, and these methods, purpose of these methods is to identify any change in the protein. For example, if we say that in case of a disease a protein change occur, for example, if we know that in sickle cell anemia mutation occur in the protein, which results in a formation of the abnormal red blood cells, right? So if we do the comparison of the healthy person along with the patient one, we can see the protein changes and what amount of the protein is being produced, that we can estimate the quantity by quantitation. Or if we want to see the modification changes, like if a protein undergoes the process of post-translational modification, then what kind of post-translational modification occurs in a particular protein, we can also identify with the help of mass spectrometry, or as a method for identifying the specific results, like we have performed an experiment, and in that experiment we want to identify a protein. We have performed the cloning, overexpression and purification of the protein, and now the protein is in the tube, but we do not know that either it is the same protein that we want to overexpress or not. For the identification of the protein, we will also go for mass spectrometry. Quantitation, which is normally performed, it is relative, but we can also go for the absolute quantification. If you recall a lecture of real-time PCR in which we discussed the quantitation method divided into two types, one of which is the absolute and second one is the relative. Relative means we do the comparison between the samples, and absolute means we are finding out the quantity of a particular sample. So mostly the quantitation by using the mass spectrometry, it is done in a relative method, because we want to compare between the samples. As I give you an example of healthy person as well as the patient, we took the sample from the healthy one and from the patient, and then we identify what is the difference between the protein, or what kind of changes has occurred in the protein. The data that we get from mass spectrometer, it is linked with a computer, and softwares are available on the computer. So software are used for analysis of this type of data, and more softwares are also being developed. So we are saying that mass spectrometry is used for quantification. The result of the mass spectrometry, if I draw over here, it is a graph-like structure in which you can see the different peaks On the y-axis is the intensity of the peak or height of the peak, and on the x-axis is according to their mass to charge ratio what will be their charge. So there are a number of factors that contribute to peak intensity in a mass spectrum. There are several factors that play important role in the intensity of the peaks, like which peak is of which length, what is the length of the peak, number of factors contribute to it. These include absolute amount of the component, how much concentration of the component that we are dealing with is present in it, and then amount of the component in relation to other components in the sample. Like we have in the sample in the tube, but there is not only the sample, there are certain buffers or certain other chemicals also. We also see the relative ratio of the component in relation to other components which are present in the sample, and then we also see the ease of ionization of component. If you see the principle of mass spectrometer, that ionization of the sample occurred in it, ionization of the components occur in it. So what is the ease of ionization of component? These are the factors which play important role in providing the intensity of the peaks that we get from the mass spectrometer results. Components that are of same concentration, they may give drastically different signal intensities. Like for instance, if I draw another graph, and in this graph I see the bands which are given in this way, the peaks appear like this. So these two were the same samples, they have the same concentration, but when I perform the mass spectrometer analysis of these two samples to find out the quantity of the component in it, then different results obtained. The signal intensities, if you see, these are the different one in both cases. Why? Because there are other components which are also involved in it, and if a protein is digested into peptides, different peptides give very different signal intensities, and some of the peptides may not be detected at all, because mass spectrometer, for example, we are using for identification or quantification of protein, and first one step in it is the trypsin digestion. It means that we have to digest our protein sample with the enzyme trypsin, and then different fragments are formed, and mass spectrometer do the analysis of each of the fragment, and then each of the fragment is further ionized. We get the different fragments, and each fragment will give the different intensities. Even some of the fragments, they do not be detected upon the mass spectrometer or spectrogram, you can say. So these are the problems that we cannot use mass spectrometer directly for quantitation of our component in the sample, because we are not able to get the reproducible result. Reproducible result mean if we repeat the mass spectrometer, we get the same result. So these results are not reproducible. It means that we need to use certain methods to improve the quantitation by using the mass spectrometer. On the previous slide, we have seen the disadvantages of using directly the mass spectrometry for quantitation of protein. So there are several methods which are developed to allow the quantitation of protein by mass spectrometry. One of the methods which are used, they are stable isotope labeling method. Now we are using the stable isotope labeling instead of radioactive labeling that we discussed previously, because radioactive labeling has certain hazards. Therefore, a stable labeling is done by using the heavier isotopes of certain elements. For instance, the normal element is C12, and we use the heavier isotope of carbon, which is C13, and nitrogen N15, and normally it is N14. So we incorporate these heavier isotope into one sample, while the other sample is labeled with the lighter isotope. In the other case, we are using the normal isotopes which are like C12 and N14. Then the two samples are mixed before carrying out the analysis, and then now the mixture contain all the proteins in which the heavier as well as the lighter isotope has been incorporated. Then we move it for the mass spectrometry after doing the trypsin digestion, and the peptides which are derived from the different samples, they can be distinguished due to having their mass difference in their masses. Then we take the ratio of the peak intensities which correspond to the relative abundance ratio of the peptides and the protein. We do the comparison, and by comparison we see the abundance ratio, that which peptides are abundant and these peptides are containing the lighter isotope or the heavier isotope. For example, I will give you an example that how it is performed. For example, there is a protein, we want to identify for its structure. For instance, for that purpose we will make a expression vector containing our gene of interest which is coding our specific protein. Then we'll take the bacterial host expression system in which we will transform this expression vector, and when this expression vector comes into the host cell, it will produce its protein it will produce our protein of interest when we will treat it with IPTG, because IPTG, it causes the overproduction of our protein of interest. It acts as an inducer for the promoter which is present along with this gene. If you recall the lacoperon that you have studied in molecular biology or perhaps during the course of advances in molecular biology, that lacoperon expression is induced when there is lactose in the media and bacteria has to use the lactose as a food source, as a carbon source or nutrient source. So now if we provide the bacteria the media containing the heavy isotope of carbon or the heavy isotope of nitrogen, then the protein which is being formed from this vector, it will contain the amino acid which have incorporated the C13 and N15. So the protein that we will get, it will contain the heavier isotope instead of the lighter isotope because we have provided it in the media. And similarly we can do on the other side the same experiment for the same protein in which we will incorporate the vector in the host and we will provide the normal media containing the normal C12 and N14 normal element. So it will produce the normal protein and it will be the labeled protein. So we will use these proteins, for example, to check their mass differences upon mass spectrometry, or we can also use the labeled protein for the structural analysis also using the nuclear magnetic resonance. So we are talking about the stable radioisotope methods, and there are several radioisotopic methods which are used for quantitation purpose. Here you can see the 5 methods. One is the isotope tagging for relative and absolute protein quantitation, and this method is also known as iTrag. So iTrag is isotope tagging for relative and absolute quantitation of protein. For this purpose, we use the 4 isobaric reagents which contain the isotopes which are isotope coded, and we compare the quantity of reporter molecules in the mass spectrometry tandem. This is known as the tandem mass spectrometry, in which we repeat the MS 2 times. Then second method which is used is isotope coded affinity tagging. It is most commonly employed. It is also known as the ICAT method, in which we use the heavy and lighter isotope of an element. For example, we use the hydrogen versus deuterium, or we use the 13 carbon and 12 carbon. The third method which is employed is stable isotope labeling of amino acid in cell culture. It is known as the CLABE. It is used for labeling of the amino acids in the culture that we provide in the media, the labeled elements. So cells are grown in stable isotope enriched media containing like 13C glucose, 15N ammonium and 2H water. The fourth method is isotope tagging in vivo stable isotope amino acid or 15N in vivo labeling. It is in the cell culture, first in vitro conditions, then in the cell culture, and now in the in vivo labeling is also being used. Then enzymatic stable isotope coding of proteome, that we use the isotope for coding various proteins which are performing the function of the enzymes, and then we can identify which enzyme is performing its function in which metabolic pathway. The example is given for the CELAC and ICAT method. For example, in the CELAC method, we said that we use the media containing the heavier isotopes, and here we can see there are two conditions, in which in one condition we have provided the media for leucine D0, one isotope, leucine D3 another isotope, and then we will do the protein purification from the cell culture. We will combine both state A and state B proteins, and then we will do the trypsin digestion, and after that we do the quantitation by using the mass spectrometry technique. ICAT method, in which there are two states, what we will do, we have taken out the proteins and we will denature and reduce the protein. For denaturation and reduction of the protein, we use certain chemicals. If you have studied about the STS page, which is sodium dodecyl sulfate polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis, in which we treat the protein in the same way. We do denature the proteins as well as we also reduce the protein. For that purpose, we use STS, which is sodium dodecyl sulfate. It is used for the denaturation as well as we heat up the sample. And for reduction of the protein, we use certain reducing agents. So the reducing agents which are used are, for example, beta mercaptoethanol, as well as we can use the dithiothiritol. So after reduction and denaturation of the protein, now the proteins are in this form. They are a linear chain of amino acid which carry like the negative charge due to the STS. Then we do the chemical modification, like now we will attach the different isotope with it, like ICAT D0 reagent and ICAT D8 reagent. These are two different isotopes which are being used for the modification of the proteins that were reduced and denatured. Then we will combine both and we will do the digestion with the trypsin. After that, what we will do, we will purify the proteins by using the cation exchange column, because now we know that protein has a negative charge. So for the isolation of the negative charge, we will carry out the cation exchange column and we will remove the excess reagent of the ICAT or the unlabeled or the free isotopes reagents, they will be removed. Then we will use the avidin column to isolate the ICAT peptides. They have the affinity with the avidin, and then we will do the quantitation by mass spectrometry. These methods in which we are using the stable isotopes, these methods are good one that we have discussed previously, but another kind of dyes or labeling we can also use, and when we are comparing the relative we are doing a relative quantitation in comparison to one another, then we use another technique which is known as the DIGE. DIGE stands for difference gel electrophoresis. It was discovered in 1997. What is meant by difference gel electrophoresis? It means that we are using a single gel method for detecting changes in the protein extract. Like we have the sample 1, we have the sample 2, we take an internal standard, we run it on a single gel, then we take different images of the same gel, because we have labeled all the three with different dyes. As you can see, the three different colors, these three different colors represent the internal standard, sample A and the sample 2. Sample A we can say of the healthy person, or sample 2 could be of a patient. So we can run on a single gel. We can take image of the single gel just like it is done in the 2D gel electrophoresis. We run the page and then the image is taken, then we use the different software for the image analysis, and by image analysis one software used is decider, and from this we get the quantitation or quantification of different proteins which are present in the healthy person and the patient one, and we get the result in this form of the gel, in which you can see the different fluorescent colors: yellow color, red color and blue color. We will discuss what is meant by these colors. So first of all is the principle of the difference gel electrophoresis. Difference gel electrophoresis is used for the separation of treated and untreated sample in a single physical gel. That I told you before, that we are using the two samples, one of which is the diseased sample or the treated sample, and the other one is the untreated sample or the control sample. We run it in a single gel. For that purpose, DIGE utilizes the mass and charge matched spectrally resolvable fluorescent dyes which have the mass to charge ratio which are matching with one another, and we use 3 dyes for the treated, untreated and one for the internal standard. So the 3 dyes are used, they include Cy2, Cy3 and Cy5. These dyes are actually N-hydroxysuccinimidyl ester derivatives of cyanine derived fluorophores, and they are known as Cy. So they possess the distinct excitation and emission spectra. They absorb light and they excite light and emit the light. It gives an opportunity for quick comparison in the differences of the protein profiles of each sample by overlaying the unwarped maps of treated and untreated sample. Like if we are running the same gel, we took images of all the Cy dye according to their excitation and emission spectra, because we are saying that all of these three have a distinct spectra of excitation and emission. So the same gel, we took the 3 images for all the 3 dyes, and then these images are overlaid on one another, and then we identify the differences in the treated and untreated sample. It is also possible to see which proteins are shared by both, which are present in one sample and which are present in the other sample and they are not present in the first sample. So we do the comparison of the number of proteins by treating them with different dyes. We are saying we are using the Cy dyes, and they have the different excitation and emission spectra. These cyanine reagents, they are useful fluorescent labels for biological compounds. They are intensely fluorescent and they are also highly water soluble. These are usually synthesized with reactive groups on either one or both of the nitrogen side chains, so that they can be chemically linked to either nucleic acid or protein molecule. Like they are synthesized chemically in such a way that they may contain certain groups, reactive groups that can react with other compounds. Like if we want to attach them with a nucleic acid or protein molecule, here you can see the structure of the Cy3 and Cy5 dye. The maximum excitation and emission spectra of Cy3 and Cy5, we will see now that Cy3 is excited maximally at 550 nanometer and it emits maximally at 570 nanometer, and it works in the green part of the spectrum, while Cy5 is excited at 649 nanometer and it emits maximally at 670 nanometer in the far red part of the spectrum. And this R group, which is represented over here and here, they don't have to be identical, they could be different. They are short aliphatic chains, as you can see, one or both of which ends in a highly reactive moieties, so that they become attached to other molecule, and these reactive moieties, they could be the melamide or it could be the N-hydroxysuccinimide. We have talked about the Cy3 and Cy5 dye. Now we will see the Cy2 dye. It is a green fluorescing dye. It is prepared as bisfunctional NHS ester. Its maximum absorption and excitation spectra is at 492 nanometer, and it emits at 510 nanometer in the green region of the visible spectra, and it is used for labeling of compound containing free amino group. As far as the sensitivity of these Psi dyes is concerned, Psi2 can bind if the quantity is as low as 0.075 nanometer. Like if the one protein is of 0.075 nanogram in a solution, then it can bind with it. While the sensitivity of the Psi3 and Psi5 is same, that they can bind to as low as 0.025 nanogram proteins. Methods which are used for labeling, like minimal, we do two kinds of labeling, one of which is the minimal labeling and the other one is the saturation labeling. In case of minimal labeling, N-hydroxysuccinimide groups, they react with the primary amino groups, typically the amino group of the lysine side chain, which is a basic amino acid. So minimal labeling include the reaction between the amino group of the amino acid, which is in the side chain of the lysine, while in case of the saturation labeling we use the maleimide group. It reacts with the sulfhydryl group of cysteine residues. Saturation Psi dyes label all the available cysteine residues. This technique is suitable for scarce sample as excellent arrays can be produced with only 5 microgram of protein per channel. That this method we can use like if the protein concentration is very less and we have very low sample of the protein, so it can give us result if we have only 5 microgram of protein per channel. They are even more sensitive, but it is technically more challenging. Usually only used when sample abundance is a limiting factor, right? So if we can't take sample in a large quantity, then we move towards the saturation labeling, otherwise we can go for the minimal labeling. Cysteines can be added and removed from the protein domain of interest via PCR mutagenesis, like as they are causing the labeling or making interaction with the cysteine residues only. Therefore cysteine we can make its addition by the mutagenesis. Mutagenesis means change in the nucleotide sequence or protein sequence, and if we want to make a change in the protein sequence, like we want to make a change over here, we want to introduce a cysteine over here, then what we will have to do, we will have to take the double-stranded DNA sequence of it, and then we have to see this amino acid is encoded by which codon, which are 3 nucleotides. So we want to change it into cysteine, so we will replace these 3 nucleotides with the new 3 nucleotides, and then we will incorporate these in the primers that we will use for its amplification, and in this way we will amplify it and then we will overexpress the mutated protein, and in this way we can get introduction of new amino acid into our protein. So how we perform the differential fluorescence gel electrophoresis, that we use the Psi3 and Psi5 to pre-label the 2 different protein samples in vitro prior to 2D electrophoresis. Actually we have to perform the 2D electrophoresis, but before that we will use to label the protein samples. After labeling we will mix the protein samples and then we will run it on the 1D, which is the isoelectric focusing IF. And then it will be run on page. It is known as 2D gel electrophoresis. We will run it again on page. So we get the result of the 2D gel. Psi2 dye is used to label an internal standard, and this internal standard consists of pooled samples. Pooled sample means we have taken equal amount of each of the sample to be compared. Like we have taken 1 and 2 samples, we have separately labeled them, like we label it with the Psi3 and we label it with the Psi5. And then for internal standard, what we will do, we have these 2 samples, we take for example 5 microliter of it and 5 microliter of it, both sample in the equal concentration, we mix it, pool it 10 microliter, and then we will label it with the Psi2 dye. It will be the internal standard. This will allow both the inter and intra-gel matching, and it is used in the standardization of spot volume in different gel. We will see how we can use the standardization of the spot volume, that the spot that appear on the gel, how they are standardized. Dyes are supposed to have a linear response to variation in the protein concentration over 5 orders of magnitude, and they offer the sub-nanogram sensitivity, as well as they are compatible with the mass spectrometry analysis. So as the dye, more dye is binding with the protein's labeling, then it has a linear relation with the protein concentration. That if we take it as the protein concentration and this is the dye labeling or the dye, so more dye bound, it means there is a more protein, and it has, as we have seen, it has the sensitivity of 0.025 nanogram. And another advantage is that it is also compatible with the mass spectrometry, but its main disadvantage is that high cost equipment, because 2D is very expensive, and the expendable supplies like the fluorescent dyes that we are using, these are also expensive one. So here is the mental flow, that how it is performed. So we have to take the sample A, sample B. Sample A is a control, sample B is treated one, and we will prepare the standard in which we will take the equimolar amount of the sample A, same amount of the sample B, we will mix it, and we are saying it as a standard. What we will do, the control will be labeled with the dye, which is Psi dye labeling. We label it with the Psi 3, we label it with the Psi 5, and we label it with the Psi 2. After that, we will run the 2D gel electrophoresis. First we will do the isoelectric focusing, and then we will separate it on the page. After that, we will take the 3 images for the Psi 2, Psi 5 and Psi 3, Psi 3, Psi 5 and Psi 2. You see all the 3 images, they contain this band, this one, this one, this one. So this is the co-detection, and then we need to normalize it. For that purpose, we can overlay the gels on one another, and here is the 3D profile of this band, that this band contain how much proteins, and if we overlay the gel, then we can get the combined profile of the protein, that either the concentration is same in all the 3 gels or different images. So here the sample one is labeled with the blue one, Psi 3, Psi 5, and then when we overlay, for example, Psi 3 is giving the blue color or Psi 5 is giving the red color, we will overlay the gel, because we are mixing the sample, we are running it on the gel, we capture the Psi 3 image and Psi 5 image, we overlay the images, gel is scanned with the excitation wavelength of each of the dye, and we get the following result. In case of Psi 3, we are getting the green color. In case of Psi 5, we are getting the red color, and Psi 3, Psi 5, in which we have overlaid the gel, we are seeing another yellow color. So yellow color shows that the protein is present in both samples, in the treated and untreated sample. And if you can see the red color, it means that this protein is only expressing in the sample in which we have labeled the sample with the Psi 5. And if you are seeing the green color, it is showing that the protein is only present in it and it is absent in the Psi 5. It is important to include the internal standard in the gel, and we label it with the Psi 2 because it ensures the accurate quantitation and it also aids in matching of the gel. So Psi 2 yellow color, Psi 3 and Psi 5, they are labeled with different colors, they are overlaid, and they are then overlaid with one another, and then the comparison is done with the standard one. Now we will see the applications of the dyes, that this quantitative differential expression analysis of sports we do in the 2D dyes. Then we can do the statistical analysis for characterization and classification of biological samples based on protein expression data. We can do the relative comparison which becomes easier, and then we can also identify post-translation modifications also. For the data analysis, we use the DCIDER software for 2D different gel electrophoresis analysis. It significantly increases the throughput by accurately addressing the measurement of the protein differences with statistical confidence that it is significant or non-significant, and reduces the hands-on time from days to minutes with minimal user-to-user variation. It has reduces the time for the experiment. Software is automatically, it detects, matches and analyzes the protein spots if we are using the multiplex fluorescent images, and it is also able to detect the small differences between protein spots with high statistical confidence. So dear students, this was all about today's lecture, in which we have studied about the isotope labeling of the samples to carry out the quantitation of the protein samples in biological experiments, so that the quantification can be carried out accurately by mass spectrometry. We have discussed that there are different methods in which we use the stable isotope labeling techniques, and we can also use their alternative, in which was the difference gel electrophoresis, in which we can use the different fluorescent dyes which shows their emission and excitation spectra at different wavelength. We can run all the samples on the same gel by mixing after labeling, and then we can use the software to find out the quantity of the protein. So this was all about today's lecture. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Thank you.